That simple phrase that is extracted from a much longer answer by Krishna, Arjuna, be assured my devotee is never lost, is really one of the most important answers that exists in the entire Bhagavad Gita. Excuse me just a moment. It's one of the most important answers given in the entire Bhagavad Gita. Because all of us, I mean every one of us, there's not a person here who doesn't have their ups and downs in their spiritual life. Sri Yukteswar, who in Autobiography of a Yogi is Yogananda's guru, and he's the image for many people of sternness, of strength, of demanding that we meet a certain spiritual standard. And still, he's the one who said, the past lives of all men are dark with many shames, he said, but everything in future will improve if you make the right spiritual effort now. We were laughing about, years ago we had a Halloween party here, and it was come as you were. And you dressed according to your favorite past incarnation, and you got to sort of play out whatever it was. And one man came completely dressed in black, and he said, I used to be a lot darker than I am now. He was quoting Sri Yukteswar at all times. You know, every day things happen to all of us in which we aspire to reach a certain level and we simply can't reach it. I was having a discussion with a friend earlier today just about a mutual friend of ours, a person that we both love and respect and have great affinity with, affection for. More than that, we're spiritually connected. And yet, sometimes even our best friends exasperate us, don't they? They're just aware to a certain extent, and then not after that. I've had such an interesting time over the many years that I've lived with Swami Kriyananda closely, just watching his extraordinary patience in the way that he works with us. He'll have an idea of something that he really feels is important for someone to learn. In fact, I remember one particular instance, there was a man in the community. He was not gifted with a winning personality. He was very sincere, and I must say, through countless tests that would have absolutely floored many other devotees, he's held on and never given up. And in that respect, I have tremendous, excuse me just a second. And in that regard, I have tremendous respect for him. But he drove us all crazy. You know, he just drove us crazy. And I remember at a certain point, Swamiji said, because he was doing one of his, whatever he was doing in such a situation, disrupting the forward progress. Swami said, I am just going to speak to him about this. And all of us said, whoa, you know, we're just really happy because, you know, you're careful when you criticize your friends. You're not really sure where you're coming from. You might just be coming from you annoying me, be different. That's not really the same as I have something helpful to say to you. There's a big difference between them. But Swami was going to speak to this man. And I know now Swami's sense of time. Swami did speak. He chose a very odd moment. We were actually in the middle of a musical situation, and the man acted out in his normal way, and suddenly Swami just turned and gave him such a strong correction. Great! It was 10 years after Swami decided to do it. Because what is the point of just telling somebody something that they just simply have no capacity to see? You know, our logic, even logic itself, even though it seems so compelling, is based on your level of awareness. You won't even think of reasons for any particular kind of action that goes beyond what you are aware of. I mean, speaking of myself, I know my friends sometimes, they'll hear certain things come out of my mouth, which seem very reasonable to me, and I've learned to sort of, this look crosses their face. Like, what could have made her think that was a good thing to say? Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. What can I say? Because my level of awareness could only go to a certain point. So all of us have to live through this, and this is really one of the most difficult aspects of the spiritual path, is not to get discouraged, but to persevere, to simply understand that no matter what has happened, everything in future will improve if I make the right spiritual effort. And Sri Yukteswar's reassurance to us that there's nothing special about our particular failings. Many years ago on the path, I was so anxious about everything that I needed a way to center myself in confidence that God was going to stay with me. And the quality that I came to, and some of you have heard me say this before, was that whatever talent I did or didn't have, whatever goodness I had or sensitivity, I was very sincere in my spiritual aspiration. And no matter what things happened to me, no matter what mistakes I made, no matter what bad karma hit me, I would always reassure myself by saying simply, I'm a very sincere devotee. I deeply desire to realize God, and if this is what happens to be, this must be what happens to sincere devotees. Complete logic in a circle, but it worked perfectly. Because what we're trying to do, really, above all, and this may sound like too small an ambition, but trust me, it is not, is to not quit, to not lose hope, to not lose energy, to not decide, oh, this is good enough and this is all I'm going to get. Now, in this section of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked Krishna with a tremendous amount of concern, Krishna, if I sacrifice home, if I sacrifice comfort, if I sacrifice wealth and personal fame and put all of that I am in this ambition to realize God, then the end of life comes and I have neither worldly success, neither pleasure, neither fame, nor God. And the whole thing will just look like a dud as far as anyone looking at it would say. And then Krishna very seriously, and it's also interesting in the Bhagavad Gita because this is a conversation between the guru and the disciple. The disciple asks lots of questions that all disciples will ask, and the way the guru answers also tells us how serious these thoughts are. And Krishna's answer here is really very long. And he tells Arjuna all the different benefits, even if in one incarnation you're not successful, that exactly where you are, all the goodness that you have acquired in that life, you begin at that point in the next. How cruel God would be otherwise, wouldn't it? Just like you watch the Olympics or any other great sporting event. The Olympics is the most intense one. You're watching Mark Phelps try to get his 900th, gold medal, and all the people, everybody's just fighting so hard, and everybody, and some guy's in the lead, and then just at the end, 1, 2, 3 people go ahead of him, and you just never see him. He's just gone. He goes to the bottom of the pool. He's just over. That's it. I have a terrible time with competitive sports, especially when there's 2 teams, like the Super Bowl or the national championship, and whoever actually wins, everybody goes hysterical. Just as, how hysterical, how physically can I express this? Jumping and leaping and banging and pouring ice water on each other and all the things that they do. And then you have the other side. It's looked like their souls have left their bodies and they're just like there because, oh my God, they're second best in the world. Isn't that terrible? But that's how we begin to think. It's like all or nothing. We don't understand that this spiritual life is such a long quest. There's just no place for impatience. And there's no place for this kind of self-condemnation that really is not the same as pulling up your socks and going forward. It's just a cul-de-sac of exhausting energy. We have literally eternity if we want to do this. It's a very grim prospect to think of that. All of us come out in creation for this day of Brahma, and Master actually said that sometimes when that whole cycle of creation, which is an impossibly long period of time for the human mind to grasp, sometimes when that whole cycle of creation is withdrawn and then remanifest. Souls are still wandering around looking for one more way to find satisfaction outside of the divine. Reincarnation, when it was first introduced to me, when I was 18 or 19 years old, was a fascinating idea, but not one that I didn't recognize it from past lives instantly, but I was interested in it. But over the years, as I've gradually experimented with it, applying it as a template to situations and seeing if it provides an explanation that warms my heart, and have become more and more embracing of it as an idea, I find it so profoundly comforting, oddly, because we realize that nothing is forever. Whatever it is that has or has not worked out for us, whatever has given us joy or has not given us joy, we have time. We have time. And we have as many chances to get it right as we could possibly need. What we're looking for, you see, is we're looking for a relationship with the divine that comforts, protects us, and gives us joy. Swamiji makes references at the end of this reading to the idea that somehow if we fail to be on the right spiritual path, or if we commit the wrong actions, or if we, back the wrong horse in the divine race, whatever it might be, that we would be condemned forever. That there would actually be a form of God that would throw us into hellfire for all eternity. I was hearing about this man who went to Rwanda, as it happened, to work with orphans there. And a lot of the relief workers there are spiritually based groups, and often they're groups, evangelical groups, that come to help. And he quickly said they do a tremendous amount of good work, but they're also there to save souls. So that he talked about this woman preacher who was preaching to this group of refugees, and she was so determined that her particular path was the right path, in this case to accept Lord Jesus Christ. She gave this whole sermon to these refugees, that if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, you're going to go to hell. And she demonstrated it. She dropped a Bible on the ground and said, this is what will happen to you, you'll just go to hell like this. So the man telling the story spoke English, and she spoke English, so he knew what she said. Afterwards, he said to one of the refugees, so how did you like the sermon? Oh, it was most inspiring. She told us that our burdens are too heavy to carry alone, and we need God to help us carry them, or else they will drop like the book to the ground. And he realized the translator had just made up a sermon they thought people would like a lot better. You can certainly see why. And this is what Krishna answers. My devotee is never lost. That is really something to contemplate. We are never lost. In our little human world, oh, this looms so large. In this incarnation, I did this, I did that. I didn't try hard enough. On our deathbed, we may have that thought. Who knows? But then Krishna says, whatever you are, I will take you from there, and we will walk forward from that point. Elsewhere in the Gita, Krishna answers a similar question. He's giving us choices. He said, devote every aspect of your life to God. And if you can't do that, then in your daily life, think about God a little bit. And if you can't do that, then make offerings sometimes. And if you can't even gather a significant offering, then find a leaf and put it on the altar. And then, in fact, Krishna says, if even in this thy weak heart fails you, then bring to God your failure. That's one of the hardest things to do on the spiritual path for most people. We sometimes find it easier to package up whatever beautiful thing we've accomplished and say, well, God is the doer. But when it's really gone wrong, when anger and small-mindedness and desire and, well, the list is long, I don't have to make it. Desire for name and fame, you can all fill in your own blanks. When we just wake up after whatever dream it has been, whether it's a year or many lifetimes. And we wake up and think, what could I have been thinking? We need to have side by side with this, these words of Krishna. We need to tattoo them on our hearts. My devotee is never lost. There's nothing I can do that could ever actually separate me from the love of God. It's hard for us to understand that because it's difficult for us to imagine that which we have not experienced or don't also know. There was a woman I saw, and she had tattooed on her back, big letters, redeemed, it said. And she was sitting there studying the Christian Bible. You know, it's easy to say, perhaps there could be a broader teaching, but when I looked at her, I thought, what must she have been through in her life? And she looked like she hadn't had an easy life. In this life and in other incarnations, that when she finally glimpsed that power of God to love her and take her out of her suffering, she felt it so strongly that she put it in 3-inch letters across her back that will last for as long as her body lasts. And you couldn't help but admire her. In fact, I walked up and I said, that's a beautiful tattoo. I certainly didn't mean it was beautiful in any sense of wanting to take a picture of it. But I thought, what a beautiful sentiment. And we all need to have that kind of courage, not merely to proclaim our commitment to a path, you know, in an evangelical way, but to tattoo it really right on our being, so that every time we feel even the slightest bit of discouragement, or the thought that maybe this time it's been too much, or, oh, I think I just won't try so much anymore. My devotee is never lost. I am always with you. We have this story of the virgins, which is also part of this. I never particularly like this reading. Every time it comes around, I often say that. There was a small aspect of it, though, this time that crossed my mind, and I'll just reference that before I stop here. When the 5 virgins who were not devoted, what the image is here is that some of the virgins were only outward in their commitment, and others had the inward commitment. In other words, it's not about what we appear to be, it's who we are in our hearts. This is one of the reasons why Krishna's comment is paired with this one here, because God reads the heart. When Swamiji said something to Master once about how he was concerned about some aspect of his spiritual life, Master's response to him was so sweet and it was so touching. It was simply this: God reads the heart. I don't know how, I can't tell you how many times in the privacy of my own home, in front of my own altar, when something I was so sure was a good idea has just blown up in my face because we can't reason beyond our level of awareness. You can just sit there in front of the altar and you can look into the eyes of the Master and realize there's no chance for misunderstanding here. Absolutely everyone else in your life, no matter how they promise you, they still remain in their own bubble of ego identity. But the Masters, Christ, Yogananda, Krishna, God Himself, He looks at your heart. Now, we all feel so lonely in this world. We have such a longing to be seen, don't we? A longing to be heard, a longing to be understood. No matter how hard we try, we'll never find that security, even among the most perfect friends. Because it's not the way we're made. We look first to God, and then we look to one another. The touching moment that I just wanted to speak to about the virgins here, and it's always puzzled me, that it's the bridegroom and the bride, but the whole group of virgins go in there, right? And then the other group of virgins go away. And Swamiji references that very simply. He said he's not really only talking about the individual's relationship to the divine, but also how we gather together, how we help one another by reflecting to one another what this truth is. The hardest thing for us to explain about the spiritual path of Ananda is not the relationship with God, we've found, but the relationship with one another. Because we do want to retreat individually and deeply into that single relationship. But there's also this power that we have when we gather together in the name of God. Swamiji has written elsewhere, if enough people gather sincerely enough and pray together with enough power, we draw from the divine a special ray of grace. That's what the avatars are. The whole Jesus himself, he was the avatar to the Jewish people. That's the extreme irony of the subsequent conflict between Christians and Jews. Jesus was an avatar to the Jewish people. He was Jewish and all his people were Jewish. Only much later, when the Jews no longer were interested in what he had to say, did that group make itself somewhere else. But we should also never underestimate the power of our relationship with one another to also keep us moving in the right direction. God first, but then God in one another. When Master came to America, he named his work Self-Realization Fellowship, which from a certain point of view is oxymoronic. Because once you're self-realized, that's an individual relationship. But he really wanted us to understand that we do it together. We all know that, don't we? How much a true friend can really help us. Here I was talking earlier about, a situation with a very dear friend of mine in which a degree of misunderstanding has arisen. But the loyalty that I and all of my friends extend to that person, even in their misunderstanding, well, I'll put it in a very casual way. It's money in the bank, trust me. And an investment in kindness will come back to us in kindness. As we express in this world, so it comes back to us. We don't have to be naive. We can see ourselves and our friends exactly as we are. As Sri Yukteswar said, anyone who's too good for this world is gracing another. Depend on it. But my devotee is never lost. And just as we rely upon God to trust and take care of us through all eternity, so we offer that to one another with wisdom, with clarity, with courage, but also with unconditional love. Oh, what a world this could be. What a world we can make if we just keep these thoughts in mind. God bless you.